Howdy neighbor, how is your garden growing? Today in my garden, we're going to be talking about and actually starting and finishing a project to transform these spaces behind me that are on either side of my garage. You may be like me and you have these kind of weirdly small spaces, but you still want to pack in a lot of design, a lot of color, and have it fit with your overall vision. My vision is I am trying to transform my front yard garden into a glorious cottage garden down here in the tropics of Florida. But one of the challenges of me living down here in Florida is oftentimes the classic cottage garden plants, well, they don't work down here. And the other challenge is that, well, the space that we're going to be working on today, it's really small. It's actually pretty tiny because it's just the small little spaces on either side of my garage. We're talking about a 4-foot by 4-foot space. And honestly, what does a cottage garden look like in a 4-foot by 4-foot space? In addition to it being a very small space, I also have the additional challenges of I might need to be looking into drought tolerant plants because these spaces stay very, very dry, even in the monsoon seasons of Florida. So if you're excited today to get some inspiration for cottage garden in small spaces or looking for some ideas for drought tolerant plants, this is the video for you. So let's first go look at the spaces. Okay, so here's the garage. Nothing very exciting. And the two spaces that I'm really looking to transform is this little section right here and this little section right here. And the first challenge that I want to resolve is the fact that these are not a symmetric design. So first off, we have, I don't know what this is, but we have had this here actually since, whatever this shrub plant is, we've had since we moved into this house. The previous owners were very into like the topiary design. It's typically cut into like 2 cylinders. But since we've lived in the house almost 10 years, and I think this design was put in years and years before us, this plant has been just slowly dying and thinning out. Whether it's because it doesn't like the location or just this plant only lives like for a decade or so, it could just go. The other thing for this space is that even though there's this downspout for the gutter, it sits right under the eaves of the house, and our eaves are pretty deep. So this area doesn't tend to get rainfall. It does get hit by our sprinklers. And yes, the rain from the roof does come out here, but it doesn't actually go into the space very well. And at some point, we basically moved this conical trellis here for reasons. I don't remember all of them. But honestly, the plants that are on it are full sun plants, and they don't like this because the sun, we are actually on the southern side of the house. So during the summer, the sun is that way, and this is all in shade, and none of these plants are happy. So we need to do something different. Similar to over there, both of them sit under the eaves of the house, which are actually really deep, which is great for our house being in the subtropics. Both from our intense sun, it helps shade the house in the most intense times of year, and it also keeps the absolute monsoons of rains that come from hitting the hard structures. But that means that these beds, honestly, I have put some swampy water-loving plants in here, and they have not done well. And overall, when I've tested the area, it looks rather dry, which is why I'll be thinking about some drought tolerant plants for these spaces. Also, because of the way the sun moves, we do know that this plant needs to be able to handle having shade for about half the year, because once the sun moves in the summertime and in the fall, that area is going to be pretty shaded. It'll get a little bit of sun, but not a lot. But then on the flip side, it can't be one of those plants that like hates the sun, because in the winter, it does get direct sunlight. Not right now. My neighbor's oak is preventing that from happening, but later in the day, it will get sun. It's much less intense sun than what we get in the summer, but it does need to be able to handle sun. So any plants that are just like anti-sun, we cannot have in this spot. And of course, the final criteria is that we are doing this transformation for an entire cottage garden. We're changing this whole yard from being totally chaotic to this like English flowing cottage style. So it's got to have like cottage vibes, even if it's not going to use plants that are classically found in cottage gardens. I know, like England with the roses and stuff, but we'll take inspiration from those gardens to help us come up with a design. And because we're not using a ton of space, we need to also take that into account. Any plants that are going to be really wide aren't going to work because the cars have to move in and out. So we've got like a lot of like things we got to work around. So I think what's up next is we need to draw the space and we need to think of plant ideas. So I've mapped out in my Wild Floridian garden planner the general spacing, but now we need to think through like what can both give us the look, fit the space, and meet all the criteria like the drought tolerance and stuff like that and the different sun needs. So one of the things I'm going to do first is let's talk a little bit about like what gives us a cottage garden vibe. When I think cottage garden, I'm thinking we've got these wild landscapes, but we also, right, like I'm thinking a little bit of Alice in Wonderland. I'm painting the roses red. So we think a lot about roses, I feel like, when it comes to cottage gardens, especially English cottage gardens. But when it comes to roses in Florida, like there are some that can grow, but there's not many. They tend to be very fussy and they need sun. And this space is not gonna have sun for most of the year. So we're just not gonna even try roses. But there are other plants that can give us like those big, bold flowers. So other plants that kind of make me think of like those big, bold flowers in the native camp, it would definitely be our native hibiscuses, like our scarlet hibiscus and our, what is it called? Like the swamp marsh mallow, is that right? Yeah, I think that's right. Versus the scarlet hibiscus, which I feel like that color red you wouldn't traditionally see as a primary color in a cottage garden design. It might be in there as like an accent. I think more of the pinks, so I feel like a swamp marsh mallow, but just by the name, I'm gonna go for it probably won't work well in the space just because of the swamp factor, but we can double check that to see if that's an issue. Other plants that kind of have that big, bold flower that I see around in Florida that might work is Ixora, but honestly, it gives me tropical vibes. Ixora is giving me tropical all day long. If I was doing a tropical garden, Ixora. I do have something in my yard that does give cottage garden vibes, and that would be like a gardenia. Oh, I love the smell of the gardenia. I love it's so pretty. It does look kind of like a rose. It's got that white look. I do believe it is drought tolerant when we're in those drought times of year, but I do think it wants a bit more sun than this area is gonna get. But it is an idea if you had a sunnier location, maybe gardenia. And the other thing is that I don't know if I want to add a gardenia to that area, because honestly, if you come right around the corner on that far side of the garage, there's already a gardenia right there. So having a gardenia, then a gardenia, like, I don't know. Also, as I'm thinking through this, I am using this part of my garden planner, which has shrub ideas that are native plants. And looking down this list, a lot of these shrubs are smaller, but one of the shrubs that's on the bigger side, and I know like shade, is marlberry. And I know marlberry in the springtime can put out really, really beautiful blooms before it starts putting out its berries. But that's like a shrub tree. Like we're in the shrub tree range. That's what I think is a bit challenging about the space, is that it's like, if I look at wildflowers, I mean, we tend to be like, you know, on the smaller side. And if I'm thinking about like shrubs, we tend to either be like short shrubs, like I'm looking button sage, but I know button sage likes full sun, and it's not gonna get quite as tall as I want, because I do want this to kind of get in the 5-foot range. So a plant that goes a little bit beyond 5 feet would be good, but I can't have it be a plant that gets really, really wide. If it does get wide, it needs to be able to take a prune. So there is some ideas here. Also could maybe think about something like Bahama cassia or privet senna, though I don't know, they tend to be like multiple stalks. I don't know if they could really be trained for such a tight space, but it is something to consider. I think they tend to like more full sun. But that's the cool thing, is when you get a list of ideas, then you go and cross check those ideas. But also, again, like privet sennas and Bahama cassias have really tropical looking yellow flowers and don't fit the vibe. Oh, and you know what's a plant that I wanted to look more into, and we talked about in the January gardening guide, is camellias. I'd seen camellias before, honestly, at Disney in the Chime Pavilion, but I've not really seen them used before. So I'm gonna take some time and I'm gonna go research camellias. Oh, and if you're looking for some inspiration for your cottage garden and you wanna use the same planner I'm using, you can go ahead and pick it at www.wildfloridian.net/planner. I got my handy dandy laptop and I'm doing a little bit of looking, and you know what? Camellias might be the thing for me. Here's what I'm finding out. One, they bloom in the winter time, so they tend to be kind of that fall through early spring, depending on which species you get. For me, in Florida, Camellia japonica seems to be one of the more popular choices. But here's the cool thing. If you live anywhere in the South, zones 8, zones 7, 9s, 10s, camellias might be a great option for you. What's also great is, similar to my gardenias, they like acidic soil. So I'm kind of already in a win-win space because our soil is acidic in general, and I've got other plants that like high acidity in the area that are thriving and blooming. Other thing I'm reading about camellias is that they don't like our summer sun, which is perfect because it's not gonna get any of the summer sun. But it does like a little bit of sun. So in the winter time, when this space is like doing what it does, like this might be the thing. I'm really liking this. And what's really cool is they got those giant blooms. There's a bunch of different options from red to whites to pinks. And when we talk about size, they're kind of hitting the size range that I'm thinking of. They get anywhere from 5 feet to 8 feet tall. They get 5 to 8 feet wide. But the thing is the space is 4 feet wide. So if we keep it pruned back on the sides and a little bit off on the top, this actually might work really, really well. The other thing that I'm reading is that they can be shaped up like kind of like mini trees. So this will be really good if we want to have something down at the base. Even if it's not going to be shaped like a tree, it's not very dense at the base. So being able to put some plants down low would be a really good idea. So I'm thinking if I can get a camellia, shape it kind of tree-ish, or thin at the bottom and then like, you know, maybe more ballish at the top with those really pretty flowers. And then I could put something down at the base. This could be really nice. If you guys know from my original planning video for this whole series, like I was like, I want to figure out a place for a camellia. And I think this might be it. So I was just checking some of the inventory at the nurseries that are near me. And one of my favorite native nurseries actually does carry some Florida friendly plants like camellias. And what's really cool is they've actually got 7 different varieties for us to choose from. I'll read them off to you now. They've got Royal Velvet, Morning Glow, Early Autumn, Laura Walker, Rosea Plena, Pink Perfection, and High Fragrance. Now, right off the bat, I'm gonna not do Red Velvet, not because it's not absolutely gorgeous. I actually think this is the one that I used to see over in Disney, because I remember in the China Pavilion, it was like a really, really vibrant, beautiful red. But since I'm not going for red, if I've got other options, this is not one for me. Similar with Morning Glow Camellia, it's white. I already have gardenias, which are white. I really don't want to add more white to this space. Garage door's white. I feel like it's not enough contrast. So let's go ahead into the pinks, if there's pinks. It looks like all the rest of our choices here are in the pink range. Early Autumn, ooh, that's pretty. Early Autumn gets 8 to 10 feet high, 6 feet wide. It's kind of a darker pink. It's feeling more tropical to me than Cottage Garden. So I'm gonna lean away from that. Ooh, Laura Walker, what's Laura Walker? This is variegated. We're not gonna have a lot of stuff in this space, so I wanna stay away from variegated. I want something that's gonna give me like a nice pop of color. So no variegated if I've got options. Rosea Plena, again, it's kind of that darker pink that I personally associate more with tropical. You might not. Feel free to use it however you are. But it's really pretty. But I really like these lighter pinks, and they've got 2 that are the lighter pinks, which is Pink Perfection, and they've got High Fragrance. Oh my gosh, if we could add some smell. Okay, well, let's look at what the differences are. So Pink Perfection, unique pale flowers, blooms late winter through spring, so that's good. That's when we still got some sunlight. It reaches 8 to 10 feet high and 6 to 8 feet wide. By contrast, High Fragrance has large, semi-double light pink flowers that bloom late fall through early spring. Okay, so maybe a longer bloom season. It is known for its strong rose-like fragrance. It grows 5 to 8 feet high and wide. So it's a little bit smaller than Pink Perfection, and it smells nice, and it has maybe potentially a longer bloom season, and it's giving us roses vibes because it smells like a rose. I think we're going High Fragrance. What do you guys think? High Fragrance? And the cool thing is that I can go ahead and put an order in online because they have limited stock. So I want to make sure I don't go all the way out to Largo and then find out that they've already sold out of High Fragrance. So let me go and snatch that up right now. Okay, so I've got it ordered. I think now the question is, with such a small space, if we're able to get these camellias in, can I put something below? And my general leaning is, I think I'm gonna do that blue-eyed grass. We used some blue-eyed grass in this last project, and I think it looks really cute. And I think we have enough space to just put like 2 blue-eyed grasses, and I think that's enough. Another thing I need to do is a little bit of research on the soil needs. So do I need to do any amending? From what I'm looking at, because it's acidic, I probably wanna get an acidifier just to kind of, when it's, just help it settle into the area. We've had a lot of like pine mulch in that area over the years that's broken down and probably brought the soil a little bit more towards neutral. So let's get an acidifier. And I also want to add some pine bark. One of my local nurseries I know sells it in 2 cubic feet bags, so we're gonna grab 2 bags. And using a little bit of that pine bark is gonna really just help bring the space together. So now let's go grab some stuff so that we can get this project going. we're back. We're ready to do this project. We've got our plants, we've got our tools ready to go, and now is the arduous task of trying to dig everything out of these very small spaces. But this might be more challenging than we think. Fingers crossed it's not too bad. So first up, we're gonna start removing whatever that plant is, the rock, and clearing the space to plant into it. So while Ben's finishing cleaning up the other area, I'm gonna start moving this stuff out of the way and prepping for us to clean this area.
What the?
No, there's a sprinkler here? Where? When? We've never, this area is so dry, how is there a sprinkler? Is it even attached to the system still?
Well, there's something attached to it still. So.
It has a root. It has a root that goes into it. That's why I suspect it hasn't been working forever. While part of that section, as you probably guys could see, it was like bone dry. Apparently there was an active sprinkler head in there because I accidentally tore one out, which explains what was going on in that specific section, which is I have a water-loving plant, which is spiderwort, and then I have a bone dry section. But that sprinkler head was buried so deep, it must have been just releasing into the soil. There's a lot of weird things with our house. It's 50 years old at this point, and the previous owners, and maybe the owners before, did a lot of unique things. The most interesting was 12 glass plates. So it's not unusual for us to find hard things buried in there, but apparently I took out a sprinkler head. So, well, that explains one thing. So now we gotta go see if we can get someone to fix it. So in an abundance of caution, Ben is rerunning the sprinklers for the western section just to make sure as we go and dig, we don't rip out another sprinkler head. And guess what we found is we actually have a sprinkler head there too. So while we're trying to solve for a drought situation, what we really have is a not working sprinkler situation.
Oh, this is gonna get tricky.
Why was that?
It's a cable of some sort.
We're trying to discover what this mysterious green box is. 8 station maybe?
Probably.
Good job. There you go. Okay, so now that we've got the root system out of the way, we've gotten the cable just kind of moved to the side. I got the old bait station out. Hooray. Now what we need to do is we need to finish digging the hole deep enough for the camellia, and then we're gonna add an acidifier because camellias, similar to gardenias and azaleas, they like really acidic soil, and while Florida has very acidic soil, we're just gonna like pump it up a little bit so that we can get some really good blooms. So we'll finish digging the hole, put in the acidifier, and then we'll move into adding the 2 blue-eyed grasses kind of per plant. So So we're gonna be using this Mira Acid, clever, acid loving plant food. So you can see over here we got azaleas, camellias, gardenias, hibiscus, holly, hydrangeas, orchids, and more. These guys need water so bad. So you have a truly drought tolerant area or just a broken sprinkler, no matter the case. Even with drought tolerant plants, we need to get them established and get a good root system for them to be able to survive the drought seasons. Because really the way that plants survive droughts is by having really, really substantial and deep root systems so that they can carry the water and nutrition through, the bad times, the dry times. So what we need to do is go ahead and give these plants a nice good drink so that they can start establishing themselves in this area and then make it through. So we're gonna have to baby them. We're gonna be watering them every few days until they get some nice roots going. It'll be all good. I'm excited. Get some big blooms. And now that the sprinkler head is fixed, it's time for me to go get that camellia and those blue-eye grasses in the ground so that they can start settling into place and getting ready to give us some awesome blooms before it heats up for summer. We're done. And what an adventure. And couldn't be more ironic that we're working on these small spaces, big blooms with drought tolerant plants, and it's starting to rain. Well, if you enjoyed following along with this project and you want to see the total project of going from total chaos to cottage garden down here in the subtropics of Florida, you can go ahead and check out this playlist right here. It takes you from the very beginning when we do the entire plan plus every single project. Okay, I'll see you soon. Bye.